welcome to the first ever episode of Paranormal. My name is Dean. I'll be the host of the show, where we are going to share people's true stories of their paranormal experiences. Now, this first episode, I'm actually going to be telling a story of someone that I know personally. For his sake, I am going to keep him anonymous, but he was actually a police officer, and that's where most of his stories actually stemmed from. So I sat down with him, and we had a long chat, telling me all of the experiences that he had, and we were able to put it into a story form, so this is his story. Back in 2011, I was employed by the state of Idaho as a police officer. The precinct I was stationed at was actually on an old Indian reservation, and the surrounding area had many abandoned buildings and such, and they all dated back to the time of an old tuberculosis outbreak. In this area, there was a hospital for patients who at the time were essentially just given a place to wait out their remaining days in the grounds until they unfortunately passed. Given this history, there was obviously many unsettling areas around the town, and there were a few of the occurrences I had during my employment there. The town also had a sinister history, as I was told around this time. There was a large missionary church, of whose main missionary was a very dark person, despite claiming to be a man of God, would perform horrific acts upon the local Native American children, both abusive and sadistic. First off, the actual police station itself was used as a clinic during the time of the tuberculosis outbreak. It had many people pass in the vicinity of the precinct itself. I would normally come into the station early in order to get in the mindset of my shift. While being the only person in the station, and while having access to cameras in virtually all the rooms and buildings, I would be met with random chilling encounters. Nothing ever became embodied, but I would on multiple occurrences, while training, hear doors slamming. I would also constantly be met with children's laughter and whispering just outside the door of whichever room I was in, only to discover nothing and no one there, plus the normal disembodied footsteps across the building. We would have to do building checks. We would have to routinely check the area around, including suspected abandoned buildings, also of which were involved during the clinic. One building in particular always seemed to frighten most of the officers when it came to checking the basement area. There was the normal upstairs area, which was not a problem, nor was the outside perimeter check, but no one ever wanted to go down the stairs to the basement door and check inside. It was as if everyone was far too afraid to even approach the area of the building. Being an able-bodied and relatively confident officer, I decided, despite my commanding officer's obvious fear, to go down there and check the basement myself. As I approached the door, I could hear what could only be described as a baby screaming, so my initial instinct was to open the door and make sure everything was okay. If there was a child, to take them to safety. As I reached for the doorknob and touched it, I was immediately confronted with a feeling of unbearable dread. It was cold. The only way of explaining it was as if something was trying to suck the soul out of my body. After proceeding back up the staircase and meeting my fellow officers, I was told that essentially every officer who has gone down there at night has had the same exact experience. A baby crying, then when they went to reach for the doorknob, an extremely oppressing dread and a feeling of cold. I went back a few weeks later to attempt again, just in case my mind was getting the best of me, or if I was too worked up, but again, I had an identical experience. Needless to say, I never checked that downstairs again. There was another old abandoned house in the vicinity of the police station, with all of its windows and doors boarded up. One night around 2 or 3 in the morning, I was on patrol around the area when I saw what appeared to be a woman in a nightgown, walking around. She went across the street, and as I was making my way over, given that there was no one and no reason a person should be walking around at that hour in a nightgown, I proceeded to watch this female figure walk down the road and eventually walked through the boarded up building as if it didn't exist. As I went down to the other side, the woman had in fact disappeared, and the building was completely inaccessible. Another odd occurrence while working at the precinct was an oddly regular call. We would receive a call every month, usually 1 to 2 times a month, but it was always the same exact call, and given our position, we would have to investigate every time. The call would always be a report of what seemed to be an older car, something in the 1970s era, with multiple teenagers all dressed in retro clothing that would match the time period of the car itself. But the witness would always see this car veering off of Highway 95 in the Winchester grade, and crashed down into the wooded area. Over the time I worked there, every month we would check out the supposed crash site, and without fail, there was nothing there. No car, no crash, no bodies, no sign of a car running off the road. The last story of my working as a police officer in this time was actually not something that occurred to me, but rather something that was shown to us and told to us during the training of becoming an officer that was fairly chilling. I can't recall when this story apparently had taken place, but it was in the 1970s or 80s. A training police officer had taken his female trainee out on her first day of patrol. They were responding to a call where the suspect's girlfriend called saying that he was acting weird. They showed up and got into the apartment when the man, who was of no real muscular stature, attacked the police officers. He was trying to wrestle the gun from the male senior officer as the trainee jumped onto the bed. The man turned to the female officer and pulled her gun from her and managed to shoot her in the neck, ultimately killing her on the first day of her training. The male officer continued to fight with the suspect for a very long period of time, until shooting him multiple times, but no shots ever seemed to slow the man down. At one point, after the officer wrestled the now deceased training officer's gun back from the suspect, he turned it on him, finding a spot between the ribs that should have been a debilitating shot. He pulled the trigger, to which the suspect replied by saying in a calm voice, "Wow, you got me good there," and proceeded to physically throw the officer across the room, which he did multiple times during the confrontation. The struggle continued for a while, with the officer ultimately unloading between 20 and 30 bullets into the man, of which one was delivered executioner style directly through the front of the head. The man in the interview even said that he could see the floor behind the man through the hole in his head, yet the man still continued to fight back until he eventually fell lifeless on the floor. Obviously, the man was suspecting a toxicology report to come back off the charts, with the man high on some crazy drug. However, when the toxicology report came back, the man was completely sober with absolutely nothing in his system. Even more terrifying, the medics said that over half a dozen of the gunshots should have been a nearly instantaneous kill shot to the suspect. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you do enjoy paranormal stories, stuff like that, please go ahead, click that subscribe button. I'm going to be trying to post as often as possible. More importantly, if anybody out there does have any paranormal experiences or stories that they would like to put out there, please feel free to contact me either by email, which I'll have below, as well as the Facebook page for the show itself. You can obviously remain anonymous. I just really want to get people's stories out there and their experiences with paranormal activity. But thank you guys very much for checking it out. Hopefully I'll get some more videos out pretty soon, especially since it's being October. But yeah, thank you very much for checking it out, and I will see you guys later.